we try every day to make it to be, it's the object of the commons, right? It's really for everybody. To that point, if you feel like you're not being represented, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to get your data as well and make it public for everybody so people can understand what we're up against.
Welcome back, everybody, to Somaini's Trust Issues. Today, and I got to be honest, I'm really excited about this conversation because it's with Alex Pinto, who is the Associate Director of Threat Intelligence at Verizon. Now, realistically, underneath it, why we're talking to Alex, because he runs the team that does the Verizon DBIR report every year, which I have always found massively important to really guide with data the security programs that we need to build. Also, just getting a visibility into what's going on. So, Alex, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me, Justin. And by the way, I'm sure you get this all the time. I love the podcast title. Gave me a chuckle when I first saw it.
Well, I think like all of us in security, we are bred with some trust issues, no doubt about that. Hey, just going into this, I know we're going to talk about the 2026 report and the data that's in that and what it shows and maybe some new things, maybe some things that haven't really changed. But I'd really like to start with just to get to know you and your journey, which I thought was really interesting. And maybe just starting out with, where you were raised and started your work career and what that journey was like to where you are now.
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from Brazil. I was born in Rio, right? I was never, for someone who's born in Rio, I think I went to the beach like a normal amount, maybe under normal amount. I've never been a big fiend, even though right now I live close to Santa Cruz and I can go to the beach whenever I want. I guess you just never shake that out of your system. But kind of the background. I went to college for CS, actually like engineer mixed with CS. And fresh out of it, I was one of the founders of what became one of the first cybersecurity consultancies companies in Brazil. That's like 2000, 2000, right? And became fairly big there. Became one of the top 2 or 3 companies over there for a number of years. And I ended up becoming, as one of the co-founders, right, as one of the technical co-founders there, I became the one they sent around the world, as in, we need to open a branch in Europe. Let's go to the UK. Yeah, let's just send Alex. Yeah. So I was the one they were kind of shipping around a lot. And so, and I ended up moving to the US around 2012-ish as a part of the expansion of that company. But right about that time, I was it was a lot, right? We talk a lot about burnout, we talk about those issues. I was running the what people understand today as a security operations center, right? And I got it's like, okay, let's take a break. And then I decided I'm never going to do security again. This is impossible. What I'm going to do? I'm going to do something productive with my time. I'm going to learn about machine learning. I'm going to learn about data science. That was the time where all of the big data stuff was coming out, like the early 2010s. And as I learned through it, and I got very into it, of course, I always liked math in college. I was like, you know what? What this could really help with? This could help with security, and it just kind of pulled me back in, right? And so about the time I was moving permanently to the US, and I started working on research that eventually became a startup around creating techniques of, at the time, all you heard was anomaly detection, and the UEBAs didn't even exist yet. That was kind of a step further. But I'm like, okay, I know this doesn't work. This doesn't scale, right? There's math specific problems why this thing never gonna work. Can we just supervise machine learning for security, right? And so at the time, I was one of the first people who was talking about this. I got accepted way more times than I should have been at Black Hat and DEF CON, talking about apply supervised machine learning to security, specifically network-based traffic, right? And that kind of helped me, get the attention that I needed to get, because again, I just had an idea. You can't do anything on machine learning or data science without data. So a lot of people got interested. We collaborated with a lot of people, became a commercial startup, right? Mm-hmm. We all got to get paid somehow. And the summary of all of that is that company got acquired by Verizon in 2018, right? And so it was a very interesting journey because it was a bootstrap company, and we were kind of at the frontier there. Are we going to get a Series A, or are we going to get acquired? And the offer from Verizon was very good at the time. And that's how I ended up in Verizon, right? I started as kind of managing the product that we have built and making sure it flourishes in the Verizon ecosystem, right? Always had historically a very strong security consultancy. And of course, again, if you tie into the network, there's all sorts of different things you could do. But I've always been an incredible fan of the DBIR, right? Yeah. Again, like I told you before, I was all about the math and the data science and the machine learning. I was always fascinated by the care, the quality, the vision, right? And so I'm like, hey, can I? I know I'm busy. I know I have this day job. Can I moonlight over there? I'm not gonna ask for more money or anything. But then, like as usual, fate happens, right? And the manager of that team, he got an opportunity elsewhere, right? And then my boss, again, who was one of the co-founders of the original company, this structure was under him. He looked at me and said, "Hey, look, I know that when I give you something, you fix it. So can you please go there and fix that for me? We need to launch this thing this year. I know you can do it. Let's just do it." Like, yeah, well, I'll give it a go. I always wanted to, and I fell in love. Absolutely fell in love. So it's been years. The product has been decommissioned. Every single other person from the startup has left. But I am here because I get to do this amazing thing every single year, right? It is absolutely the best job I've ever had in my life. It is incredible, the kind of what we can do, right? What we are able to achieve. I'll try to describe as a follow-up, but it's really hard to describe.
Well, that's amazing. Two small things. One, maybe you can help me out. Maybe you can't, but you're my best friend right now, because I went to a wedding in Rio years ago, and I fell in love with caipirinhas, and so they're dangerous. Very dangerous drinks, but I've never figured out how to make them well. And so if you ever find a recipe with friends and family,
it's about the liquor. You have to find a very good cachaça, right?
Yeah.
There are some import stuff that you can find that is I'd say it's very good, very close to the what you would get natively, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Right. I'll send you some recommendations. Yeah. The names escape me.
But, and you need to get, I think it's like proper cane sugar, right?
You do need proper cane sugar. It has to be cane sugar. Yeah. But that's all. That's 3 ingredients, right? That's all there's to it. You make a lemonade, cane sugar, and you just pour as much as you're comfortable, as much as you don't have to actually pilot heavy machinery after. You just put the cachaça in there. And you know what? That's it. That's your evening. That's all your barbecue or, whatever activity you are.
They go down easy, but they let you know that you drank them eventually. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how long, remind me again, you've been managing the DBIR report for how many years now?
So this is it's 7 years and a half-ish, right? So this is the 7th report that I am an active author. I'm writing, I'm editing, I'm choosing the topics, right? I'm doing the analysis. When I joined the team, it was in a transition period where they had just written the first draft and somebody had to get it through the door, right? So I did help put the 2019 report together, but I didn't write in it, right? But from the 2021 onwards, it's all my fault. Right. So cannot blame anyone else for those.
So maybe set the table a little bit on the DBIR. It's been going on for what, 20 some odd years. And then, how do you get the data? What is the data like? What is that process like in building this report, which I can only imagine. I have a hard time creating a simple PowerPoint. Creating this report has got to be a really endeavor, a big endeavor, I would imagine.
Look, it does take a full-time team the whole year.
Yeah.
So it's not, it is as difficult as it looks in many ways, right? But I think there's a lot of things that make the DBIR interesting. It was definitely not the first report, security report, right? Even though it started in 2008, right?
Mhm.
19 years ago ish. So when it started, right, it came from an idea, and this was Dr. Peter Tippett, which was again one of the main directors at Cyber Trust, who was the company that Verizon acquired at the time to become their security branch, right? And he worked with Wade Baker, who you may have heard about. He runs Scientia now. He does a lot of his job now is to make security reports for other companies. They hire him, they send him the data. I mean, they're the best there are. They're absolutely. Yeah. I mean, nobody does it like he does, right? And also Dave Highlander, who is still a part of the team, right? We have someone here who has been working on every single one. And we have all this data from the Verizon instance. I mean, again, you talk to this, obvious, everybody does this, but this is like 20 years ago. We have all this data from the IR engagements here. Why don't we try to put this data together? Why don't we try to tell this story? They got like maybe 2 or so years of data, and they published the report. I believe it was the first one with that focus. Oh, let's look at the breaches. And that's why it got so much, right? It was so well received, got so much attention at the time, right? And the thing that made it, the longevity of it really, is that by the third edition, I think the 2010, I might be wrong, might be off by one, the Secret Service, the US Secret Service reached out to Verizon and said, you guys, you do the best job there is on this. Nobody's doing this. We want to give you our data, right? We want our data represented in the statistics that you're doing, right? Of course, you're not going to tell them this data point is from the Secret Service, right? Yeah. Let's combine it with your data together. And we'll publish a report. It's not just Verizon anymore. It's also data from the Secret Service. I wasn't there at the time, right? But I suspect that when you talk to people, hey, the Secret Service is giving us their data, people start getting more open to the idea of giving you their data, right? Yeah. The Secret Service trusts you, right? And so again, we're forever thankful. They get an op-ed on the report every year as a thank you.
Is that a subset of the? Now was the IC2 or the FBI's? The FBI's data. The Secret Service is separate data.
It's
correct?
Separate, completely separate. They focus on financial crimes, financial extortions and things like that. Even before we call these things BEC, even before we call these things ransomware, right? Anything on that vicinity, they had a very active investigation presence around, right? And so that's kind of where it all stems from, right? The reason why the DBIR is still relevant today after 19 years is because it's not Verizon's data. Right? Verizon's data is a tiny percentage. We have this year, we actually hit the 100 data contributors mark, right? And so some of these, they provide us incident data, right? Which is kind of the primary focus of the report, the primary thing, right? So we tell, ransomware is up, this thing is down, right? And it's kind of like, it's almost like sports commentating sometimes. We try not to make it that way, but trying to again, this is the perspective, right? If you want to look at raw, how often are these things happening, right? We do believe, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody has the whole data, but because we claim to be, and I feel very strongly about this. If there is a capital T truth, we are probably the closest approximation there, just because of the breadth, just because it's not our perspective. We're getting everybody's data, everybody's perspective, talking to everybody in order to put this thing together, right? And the main, and this model has gone throughout all these years. The main thing we changed, gosh, it's almost 10 years now since we've done that, is that we started working with data which is not just the instant data. Because, again, if we want to, okay, ransomware is bad, has been bad for a significant chunk of time. Yeah. Then what? What does bad mean? What does that mean? Right? And so we're like, okay, can we get data? You mentioned IC3. Can we get data from IC3 about how much ransom is being paid out? Right? Can we talk with ransomware negotiations to get their pulse to see how things are going? So we can get an overview. One of the talking points we have, this is the report. It's talking point for a few years now. What did the payouts look like? Right? What's the distribution? Are people paying the ransom or not? Right? These are all data we collect from partners like these.
So you're doing that. I mean, so going to that point, this is not just Verizon and Secret Service, but you're also going out to those other data sources like IC3 that you mentioned to get to really paint that whole picture, for lack of a better phrase, right?
It's kind of, we kind of handle the process kind of like a newsroom, if you think about it. It's almost like even though I have no journalism training, right? I like to think of it as the way I imagine in TV how it works, in the sense like, hey guys, this is happening right now. Are we able to talk about it, right? So an example of, again, a topic from this year's report, right? What is the real impact of Gen AI augmentation in attacks, right? Nobody has this data. Everybody's guessing, unless you are at a frontier lab, AI lab. Everybody else is just guessing, right? Okay, we should talk to an AI frontier lab, have them become a partner, and then we'll know. And then we'll have the data to talk about this intelligently. So that's really how we drive the kind of the year-to-year process of putting this together, right? How can we meet the moment? How can we give CISOs, how can you give boards of directors, how can you give the practitioners, everybody, the data they need to make the decision, right? You've been in security for probably as long as I have, maybe more, right? It's all a lot of noise. Everybody has their megaphone, they're shouting that their thing is the most important one. And in a way, they all are all important, right? But there is, if you don't start putting things in perspective and trying to give the kind of the cold hard data, right? No one can make an informed decision. There's no information. You know what I mean? It's all noise.
I completely agree, and I think from a security practitioner, an operator's perspective, there is a lot of marketing vendors that are out there, and maybe just taking a step back, I dig through there's literally about 1,500 seed A and B companies. We're not even talking about later stages. 1,500. And then when you boil them down, I go through a process for the podcast of, hey, I can boil them down to the 50 or 70 that are really important. There's a couple of criteria. I'm not going to bore you there, but imagine 1,500 companies. And we don't have new market segments in cyber, really. But so you have all of these companies marketing themselves to solve identity and access management, vulnerability, whatever it is. That's a lot of noise. And they're all trying to differentiate, use different names and conventions. And it's a headache. So I completely get that. So going back to the report a little bit, so over those 20 years, you built it up. A really interesting backstory, actually. I didn't really know the depth of the data that you guys pulled together. And you said it takes all year to really pull this report together. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, as soon as we launch this one, we're going to sit down. Okay, what did we miss? Because we were so deep putting this together. Where do we have to go? So I can tell you already one of the topics of 2027 DBIR right now, right? We're going to have to look into this whole open claw mess, right? What does this agentic AI proliferation looks like? How much of this is more consumer oriented in a way, but because we focus more on enterprise, of course, kind of impacts organizations. But again, given a lot of info stealer related stuff of Credential being stolen is like happens on a non-corporate machine that has corporate data. So is there really a distinction, right? And so, I mean,
synthetic employees. I mean, the North Korea employees situation came
yeah,
out.
that was a
I
topic
thought
this year. That
it
was a
was
topic this year as
it's in
well.
this
Yeah.
report,
Yeah.
2026 report. But honestly, I heard onesie twosie scenarios in the past 10 years, if you will,
Yes.
that certain organizations got embedded, whatever. But it really seemed to kind of blow up this year more than I appreciated until later on in 2025, personally speaking, right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe switching over a little bit, what are some of the highlights in the 2026 report?
Well, it's interesting that you kind of set it up nicely on the what are things that are new and things that are maybe just. And we've been lucky, I guess, this past few years because we've been calling some shots in a way. Because I mean, you start seeing the trends when they start, right? And you can kind of, okay, this is where it looks like it's going to go. So one of the headlines here that we're leading on, and which again is incredibly topical. This was all written before all this new conversation about vulnerability research being augmented by AI, but is that we've been tracking exploitation. So one of the things we track, just take a small step back, is initial access vectors, right? Breaches are everywhere, all sorts of different outcomes. Are they espionage driven? Are they financially driven? Okay, how do they get in? What is the first thing? What is, you're thinking about first line of defense, of course, defense in depth, all of that stuff. But yeah, how do I stop them the soonest possible? Always been credential abuse from the beginning of time, ever since we started tracking, right? Has been some sort of like credential stealing, maybe a phishing you didn't catch, and then this thing was repurposed for you. And this year, for the first year, exploitation of vulnerabilities is the number one. And we have seen it grown since the 2024 report, 2023 data, right? Where when MoveIt happened, MoveIt was really kind of a watershed moment of, oh, okay, so all this thing we have heard, as a kind of a bedtime story of, the nation state actors are going to use the 0 days around you. If a nation state actor is going after you, no, these are like, kids, ransomware operators. They are dropping the 0 day now, right? Like it's worth nothing.
Yeah.
And so we saw it start with MoveIt, right? And kind of this kind of software. There were several cases in 2023, 2024. We started really hitting the kind of the edge of network stuff, perimeter, firewalls, VPNs, right? And then, of course, again, you normally don't put a firewall ahead of your firewall. So that's kind of the front line there. The front line is vulnerable. So there was a lot of, again, line went up again. And this year it overtook. And we can't even call a trend as then, it was stuff like MoveIt. It was stuff like the edge of network stuff. It was everything. Right. And so it's 31% of everything that all breaches that we tracked that were from external actors, right? Means hackers coming in instead of like internal, either accidental or not, right? Was a vulnerability being exploited.
And I think the vulnerability before, for context, was like 20% versus 31%. Am I directionally accurate?
Yes, yes, exactly that.
So what do you attribute that to?
There's a few interesting things, right? Because when we saw that, when we also have a long-running exploration of vulnerability management, right? Which is kind of the first thing your mind goes to. Well, they wouldn't have been breached if they patched. Well, it's not that simple. But the patching part is actually a little bit harder than it may sound at first, right? And so one of the things that we saw this year, which is incredibly concerning to us, is that, hey, the pressure has been on for a long time, right? There's always more vulnerabilities, more things get added to the season on exploited vulnerabilities list every year, and companies are doing. So we've been tracking performance, right? How good are people on patching? And again, we're just leaving it to the CISA-CAV, right? Let's not debate what critical is, right? Do you like the CISA-CAV? Do you don't like CISA-CAV? Doesn't matter. That's what we're aiming at right now. Last year, the percentage of unique CVEs per organization. So I'm an organization. I have 10 CVEs. I closed one of them. That's part of this figure. Was 38%. So 38% of all unique CVEs from the CISA CAF per organization were patched. So I'm not counting, I had 5, I patched 4. I don't know why you didn't patch the last one. Did you forget? Did you put a risk exception? I can't know that. I'm focusing on we know this is done. 38%. This year, 26%.
So
way less.
Worse.
Yes. The time it takes for them to close that, the time it takes for them to do that thing. Okay, let's do all the instances of DCVE. Last year, the median time, so that means 50% of people did better than this, 50% of people did worse than this, was 31 days, around a month. This year, 43 days. And
that's a markedly different data point than previously. Is that if we go back like 5 years, is that a multiple year-over-year trend, or is it an anomaly?
So that's the thing, right? And so we looked at that. Okay, what's going on? Exactly your point. And so we reverted back to one of our vulnerability management partners. Okay, I know. Look, for everybody's sake, I know you've been giving me aggregated data because I know I'm not going to replicate your huge engine here, but I know you have this like by each one. Let's look at each one. And so we went together over 1 billion vulnerability instances over the past 4 years, right? And trying to see, okay, let's do one by one. Let's not look at closing the CVE, one by one that they have to patch. And so we have this chart of the report where we talk about the survival analysis, right? And so kind of burn down rate on money, on like your agile development, same kind of thing. So you see the curves of 2022. Okay, 2023. Oh, it's getting closer to the bottom. We're getting better. 2024. We're getting even better, even though the amount of vulnerabilities to be patched are doubling each year, right? So it's like 60 million the first year, 120 the second year, 240 the other year. 2025, we go back. 2025 doesn't continue the trend of us getting more efficient. It rolls back to 2023 years.
Interesting.
520 million vulnerabilities, right? 23 was 120 million vulnerabilities. So the high fives all around. We did 400 million vulnerabilities more with the same efficiency, but we're not even catching up. We're running backwards. That's the problem. It's unsurmountable. It's an unsurmountable problem, right?
And so
it's not. Sorry, go ahead.
No. This is fascinating. One, it is vulnerability management is core. I mean, when I say core, it's like core to any security program. But underneath that, it can be broken up into a couple of different subcategories of how do I patch, code. For example, open source and then company developed code is maybe 2 buckets. How do I patch workstations and then networking device and infrastructure and then production assets? I'll just leave it at that. Do you have any color on, that's a layer of fidelity that can be a little bit difficult, but do you have any color on those subcategories underneath what we need to patch?
So not really, because we would have to go into how each one of these companies handle this kind, especially when again it's native code from the company that's getting some. So this analysis is purely focused on CVE stuff. It's like someone that has a CVE, something that made the CAV, right? And so we usually do analysis like these for other types of exposures when the data is available. So things like, cloud, MFA, you can use the same methodology, right? But, so we are not, because of part of the anonymity, we don't know who the victims are. Like it's a very important part of, we struggle into getting into that, level of detail. it's like you said, it's not like, oh, vulnerability management is not important. It is the most important, if you think about it right now. But it's one we really want to. And this is a message we have been, again, talking for a few years now, because we have seen this even while we were doing better, right? It was like, hey, 40%, 30% is not great, right? I mean, it is, if you're looking for a benchmark against the industry, right? But the attackers are not looking for a benchmark against the industry, right? They're just gonna go in. And so, but it's one of those things where the only way through is having less vulnerabilities. As weird as that might sound, it's kind of like, okay, of course, Captain Obvious, but how do you achieve less vulnerabilities to patch is really
well, I'm
the
really
interesting
happy
part.
that you asked, Alex.
Exactly.
No, I think you're getting to some of the crux of how do we solve some of these problems. Before I jump into that, and I know we have a bunch of other topics we can hit on, but I think this very basic meat and potatoes kind of a function. Is there a change from when a CVE is created to when it is starting to be exploited? What is that window of, hey, I need to remediate patches within a time frame to be ahead of the attacker? Has that changed over the years?
I mean, there's people who have done way better reporting than we have on stuff like this. You're probably aware of what's it called, the 0-day thing, the website, right? I found it fascinating. Honestly, I'll be honest with you. Last year, we've been doing this for a few years. Okay, what's the time for? Look at the CISA Cavs. What's the time? What's the expected time, right? When last year, the expected time was a 0-day. We stopped tracking. It's pointless. Why? I didn't do we didn't even talk about it this year, right? The expectation that these things drop immediately right now. It's incredibly rare. Again, look, it's one of those, that's one of the issues of having a report that only launches once a year, right? I'm incredibly curious to see. You just saw Palo Alto yesterday, right? They just 70, they've been doing the work with the blasphemy stuff, right? Is this going to mean less vulnerabilities at the end of the day, hitting quote unquote retail? One can hope, right? But everything else, as far as not today, but maybe a month ago, right? Let's linchpin it there. Before April, things were mostly like, oh yeah, by the way, this is already being exploited. So go patch as soon as you can.
I think there's a couple of things, and I'm going to put on my optimistic hat here a little bit. If we used a window of remediation, so we'll hit 0 days and we'll hit, CVEs, known issues. And I'll make a promise to you. I won't talk about any specific vendor on this conversation. We have them in the podcast. I'm not going to, make you go through those slings and arrows of pain.
I have, especially because I talk about a lot about security outcomes and security product outcomes. My lawyers from Verizon, they asked me to print a very big "No Disparagement" banner that sits in front of my desk. So yes, I would rather we don't.
Don't worry, Alex. I can talk negatively about any vendor. I won't put that on you. No, when we look at, let's say, source code or open source, where CVEs would be not on company developed code, that patch management cycle with engineers is horrible. It's an output of really bad coding to begin with. We tried SDKs 15, 20 years ago, actually maybe even more than that. We tried a bunch of things. We're now having, because open source has gotten into, hey, download that open source image and use it as a baseline. And it comes with a chock full of vulnerabilities into it. We're seeing solutions minimizing those only necessary components. And that's really important. There's a couple of key vendors in that space. We're starting to see in the code base of how do I do a threat modeling and how do I do code reviews and code remediation of vulnerabilities. They're vendors in that space. And of course, they're leveraging AI to kind of delabor that overall process, which makes me very optimistic. I mean, listen, it can't get any, well, I guess it could get worse than what it is now, but it should say that. But really, labor is fundamentally the number one problem in security teams. So that means we need to drive to high automation. I'm not going to use the AI bubble word here. It's a lot more complex than that. But we're starting to see solutions come out to delabor some of these key functions, which would drive us to how do we not have those vulnerabilities to begin with? And if they are there, how do we do the, the false positive analysis and then do code remediation? On the workstation side, I think where the industry has gotten to the point, and I definitely did at some of my companies, where it was just a default. Every 2 weeks, workstation patches were deployed natively to that OS, whether it's Mac, Windows, or otherwise. And if it was critical enough and we really felt the need, we would force it, versus user kind of driven. That kind of leaves infrastructure things when, hey, how do you refresh to gold kind of processes? So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to change. We've been in that world of not having the, hey, I need to issue a patch versus refresh the environment, so to speak, where it sounds like maybe the companies and the teams haven't fully morphed into that new world to kind of drive that down. I don't know. I mean, obviously there's a lot of unknowns in this as we're talking about it, but I'm pretty excited because this is not a small problem.
No.
And second to that, the whole, glass-wing mythos, it's not going to create, in my mind, 0 days in the threat, but the attackers are going to be using more of the open source models to do analysis on open source projects, as well as figuring out the orchestration. I know that's in your report as well. But the security teams need to, switch it on and be very leaning in on this, or else the tidal wave is going to hit them. That's just my.
And I don't think you need to be an AI hype person to just observe the fact that whatever we're talking about today as frontier, as only a few, right? It's going to be generally available in 6 months. Even if these versions are not made available, the open source models they tend to catch up, right? I don't know. Let's be very optimistic. It's going to take a year, right? But a year's nothing. But I believe we need. And again, I am not an AI guy. I'm not a AI is going to save us person. But we really need to use every leverage that we can now. Right? If it looks like, whatever can help, whatever can, to your point, the labor and focus, and leverage. Yeah, we have to give it a go. That's for sure.
So vulnerability management exploitation control to remediate the whole vulnerability management process. Right underneath that, you said it overtook credential theft. And now that's a separated out in your report this year from phishing to pretexting. Hey, maybe give us a little bit of color around that second category.
Yeah. So we've always, so historically we have kept, there were 3 categories, right, on the initial access vector, right? And so in addition to the exploit vulnerabilities we talked about, we had credential abuse and phishing. And those 2 have always been in conversation with each other because sometimes, less now than I would say 5 years ago, but a credential, a breach that started with credential abuse would oftentimes be a breach where you didn't catch the phishing when it happened. I don't know how many time ago. And again, but given initial access broker activity and again, pervasive use of infostealers, pervasive success of infostealers, right? It's incredibly hard for you to do a lineage study of where did this stolen credential actually came from, right? When we know it's phishing, right, we're able to talk about it. No, it's phishing. So what we did this year is the kind of the pretexting piece. And so pretexting, again, and again, as a background, as a giant step back, I was telling you about the Secret Service joining way back when. The people in charge of the report, hey, these databases are very different. We have to create a framework. We have to create a kind of a taxonomy to describe the stuff. So that's when we put together the Veris framework, right? Which, I mean, every single thing there is a named thing. Every single pretexting, phishing, there's a very clear definition of what we're talking about so that not only us, but our partners and everybody can kind of, and when we're mapping things, we're categorizing things, we can always make the same choice, right? And so that's kind of the background. Where does this weird pretexting name that nobody uses comes from? But the distinction there is phishing is the point in time. Sent you a message, I sent you an email, there's a CTA there, there's a call to action. You like open the spreadsheet, go to this link. There's no expectation of a dialogue. The threat actor sent you a message and you do with it what you may. The pretexting is the interactive one, right? Someone gave you a call. Hey, so my password, I need to change, right? Or they sent you that hello you get on your phone sometimes, right? That you know cannot be anything good. Most people don't think, maybe, well, hello, how's it going? So anything that is interactive, there is a threat actor on the other side. We hope, right? We hope. Again, it's one of those things where we expect the labor aspect counts for us because there has to be a guy on the other side. When it doesn't have to be a guy on the other side, things might get a little bit worse. That's the distinction. So, I mean, pretexting has been a thing since forever, but it's been mostly focused on stuff like business email compromise, financial fraud. Again, it's like too many to count. It's been around forever. The increased success of these techniques for ransomware extortion attacks is kind of okay. Now we need to bring this up to kind of a first level citizen here in that regard. And again, of course, the shiny hunters they pioneered this, quote unquote. I mean, not the first one to do it, but they were incredibly successful with the MGM one in 2023, I think, right? But now it's everywhere. There was so many relevant, impactful stuff from Qantas to Marks and Spencer to Co-op. You can draw a straight line to so many of them now, which were very impactful to kind of this type of social engineering practice. That it kind of became a first-person citizen there for our report. And this is kind of one of the findings that we have as well, because we wanted to kind of shine a light on this. Oh, why is this so much more effective? Is it much more effective, right? And it's really kind of a sea change. The problem is we think about social engineering, our minds usually default to the email phishing, right? Because it has been historically the most prevalent that would face an organization. And so, again, everybody's drowning on phishing training, email phishing training, and everybody gets, phishing simulations all the time. But there's not enough work, I believe, at least we couldn't find vendors. Let me put it this way, to get us the data of specific voice-based phishing simulations and pretexting simulations and things of the sort. It's a completely different mindset, right? We all know to look for the misspellings. We even have a joke on the report. I say, we all learn to look at the misspellings, and then we have a footnote. Actually, given how AI is doing this, we should be looking for M dashes, not misspellings on the emails. But again, and especially if you think about how those attacks are targeting the IT supports, the call centers, these guys are trained to help. That's their job, right? We often talk about how are you going to tell people to not click on the links? Our job is to click on links on the computer. That's the job description, right?
I'm going to be a little tongue in cheek here, but MFA, universal MFA application should solve all of those problems, right?
Well, look, you'll never catch me advocating against people doing MFA, right? But like everything else, right, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of different things that you have to, again, especially on the same call center that you call and say, please reset my password. Oh yeah, I lost my phone. Can you reset my MFA? And you're done, right? There's always going to be the human component there. And I don't mean that disparagingly, like, oh, it's, humans are terrible, it's always their fault. No, I mean, you have to think about that training aspect. You have to think about you can have the most beautiful process in the world, right? Where does it touch the humans? Are the humans aware of the process? What is the potential failure rate? Every process has a failure rate, right? It doesn't matter if it's a machine, right? If it's a computer. So are you ready for fail rates? Are you thinking about those? This is a conversation way beyond security, right? If you think about it, right? But it all comes together at that specific point, right?
But I mean, the MFA thing, bringing it up is, I think your report showed, and I might be wrong here, shows that even with MFA, it's what type of MFA, because some of the ransomware and attacking crews, if you will, will be able to leverage those 2FA credential pairs or compromise the OTP to be able to bypass those controls. Now, it's not extensive, but just because, hey, I threw on an MFA doesn't mean that it's a great MFA.
Yeah, it's one of those things like damn the machine identities, right? Because we were mainly talking about, again, documented cases, right? We focus this on a section we talk about like third-party cloud-based authentication, right? Especially on infrastructure as a service. That's the only lever that you have, making sure that you know who your users are, you know they're accessing it, you know they have permissions that they should have. The Salesforce related breaches where Salesforce wasn't breached, but there was this plugin, right? The Sales Loft Drift, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so the story, as it's told publicly, is that they got breached, and the kind of the master keys of the OAuth authentication. That's what got compromised, right? So it's kind of you stole the seed from the MFA, if you will. It's not the same thing, but it's kind of equivalent to that. And so they could get into any instance they wanted to, right? And so from a victim perspective, I am a user of Salesforce using that. There was nothing you could do there. It doesn't matter. You could have the absolute best, control only these people. I know exactly, but the plugin was there, right? Allegedly, the permissions was not as good as they should be, but I can't tell you if this was by design or if this was oversight from the analysts. Oh, let's just give it admin. I don't want to bother configuring it correctly. But that was the call, everybody, right? They were not the leverage point there, where the victims could have had a better outcome, right? Was thinking through the kind of the permission exposure of the specific plugins that they had. But again, we talk about MFA being hard to deploy, right? And a nuisance, and again, everybody has to get into it, right? Privilege management is impossible to do. Incredibly hard. Every app is its own unique snowflake, not a reference to the snowflake breach as well. And so just reasoning through all of that is, so we understand why people fall. You can't blame the victim. We understand why it falls through. But again, if you have those, if you're not paying attention to this, you absolutely should, right? It's kind of the message that we kind of want to make sure gets out there.
So taking a step back to the trends in this, we talked about two key components to any security program, as well as the number one and number two initial access vectors. I think I'm right on that statement. What other big trends pop out of this report for you?
So the one we were really, really curious about for a few years, and I'm personally very glad we were able to make it work, was about the whole conversation about, okay, what do AI augmented attacks really look like, right? And so for a few years now, we've all been getting kind of onesie twosies of, oh yeah, we observed that this actor was doing this bad thing, and here's the report about they were doing, right? It's one of those things where it gives you, there's smoke, right? But you're not sure how big the fire is, right? Maybe you're a little bit too far away. And so for this year, we managed to partner with Anthropic this year, and specifically their AI safeguards team, because again, they are fighting this war in the trenches, right? This is all for them are terms of services violations, right? And so they managed to do a kind of a retrospective work of around what were the terms of services violations around cyber in their environment for over a year. And that's kind of where some of their publications came from. The one about the orchestration, that was, I think, November last year.
Yeah.
That's kind of where those kinds of findings came from. But they're like, okay, this is the whole data set. So we have mapped every single prompt, and I didn't see the prompt and outcomes to be perfectly clear, but for every single one of them, we have been able to match them against attack techniques. So this is what they were trying to do, right? From a language or a perspective that makes sense to defense, that makes sense to defense, makes sense to attackers, right? And map this out throughout the year. So they had over 800-ish, I'd say, unique threat actors, right? And so either one account, I'm pretty sure if people were hopping accounts, they made some correlation there. Oh yeah, this is the same guy, right? And over, I think, out of the top of my head, 10,000-ish instances of attack techniques. And so we just, okay, let's play with this. What are people actually trying to do? And so we did it a few ways, right? So Anthropic is going to release, or will have released by the time this thing is on the air, their, kind of the data set, their analysis of the data set. So we ended up putting a twist on it on the way, again, because we have all sorts of other access to other stuff, to make sure we could contextualize it better. So two main things we were worried about. First of all, okay, how good are these guys? First, right? Is this just someone? Yeah, hey, I'd love to ride a ransomware, or do they seem to have consistent, control, and are they doing a lot of these things? And so we have a distribution there. Again, the 50% mark, as I told you before, kind of the median, is like for each one of those actors, like 15-ish attack techniques that they were engaging with on their campaigns, right? Some cases went as high as 40 or 50, right? The orchestration case they talk about, which is in this data set, right, is on the 40, 50 attack techniques at the same time, unique attack techniques at the same time, right? To be clear, right? They can be asked the same thing over and over again, if that was the case. So we definitely don't want this number to go higher, right? The more different techniques are leveraged at the same time, this tells us it's potentially a higher risk actor leveraging those technologies, right? But then apart from volume, we were interested, okay, what's the nature of these things they're asking about, right? And so are they asking, how do I encrypt files on Windows, right? Which is something that every single ransomware malware has done and will do, for the end of time, right? And so it's just going to be one more. Every single EDR in the world will alert you if someone is trying to encrypt a file in Windows. It's incredibly well controlled type of attack. I mean, we're not good at stopping it. I'm not saying we're good at stopping it. I'm saying it's known, right?
Yes.
Or it's, oh no, man, I really want to reverse engineer the firmware on this type of thing that nobody has ever done before, right? So we were matching the attack techniques to a large software repository that MITRE has. So MITRE catalogs all the malware they come across and hacker tools and all of that. Again, so we know if this was used from this time to this time by this group, and these were the attack techniques that, if you had detection for those, you would have caught these guys, right? Okay, so how many unique examples of malware leverage a specific attack technique was kind of the number we were looking for, right? And so the overall result was good in my opinion, right? Again, looking at the median case, like the mid part of that bell curve, 55 unique pieces of software around the attack technique that was being leveraged, which is, I think it's a good number. 55 malware that does the same thing as they're asking, we probably got defenses for it, right? it's sort of something that wouldn't catch us by surprise. It's kind of what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
But when you go to the left side, right, of the bell curve, you are looking at one. Oh yeah, there's like one thing that we have found that does that, and that's when it starts getting interesting, right? And so if we don't know if they are successful. They were successful in leveraging or developing. We don't know that, but the more people would focus on things that are novel for AI augmentation and put together a specific combination. All these attacks, none of these attacks are novel. They're all documented on the attack framework is as, bread and butter as you can get.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't happen often anyway, even if it's documented, it's less likely that defenders will have the infrastructure or the model, even the threat modeling, really, to handle those things, right?
You bring that up, or the AI enablement, and especially you talk about Anthropic. Today, the open models are really good. I mean, obviously, what Opus 4.6, whatever the latest and greatest frontier models are a lot better. But to do malware code development, you can be pretty darn successful at doing it with the open models locally. I wonder if as those models mature, I think we have Gemma 4 and, Quen 3.6 now, or, as the code, I mean, they're pretty darn sophisticated and capable of doing pretty amazing things at scale, whether it's, how do I write a better phishing email and better attacks, which we've had people on the pod, come in and talk about the AI, social engineering type of attacks, but raw code development. I think this is really where the center point of AI plus malicious actor is really going to sit. How can I create easily bypassed or fragmented malware to kind of avoid rapid development versus what we've seen historically? And that's pretty terrifying in a lot of ways. I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but
no,
for me
it does. It does, right? The way I see it, right, is that like we talked just previously, right? There is this curve of not adoption, but this curve of improvement, right? As in the frontier model will, for now, will always be better first, right? I don't know if this is going to hold next. Okay, you're watching this in 2030. I am sorry. I'm sorry this didn't hold. But my point being that this is, of course, again, a snapshot on one frontier lab. We cannot account for the work that's being done on the kind of internal models. But the kind of the expectation, right? This is something I talked to them a little bit about, that they still see a lot of action from like your nation state-ish folks, because they want to know what the frontier is like. They want to plan for the 6 months from now, right? So you do see, even in this data, you would see a kind of a cross section, right? Of what the activity would look like on these internal models. But yeah, I don't think we're going to necessarily be watching, like not us, but the frontier, the safeguards folk from the frontier model labs. They're going to be necessarily expectating where the next big 0-day gets developed by that. It's probably potentially could be on one of those internal models, obviously. Yeah.
Before I get into the key categories of remediation, you had in this report, and we talked about it briefly, just kind of set the table of, the synthetic employees, some coming from Iran or other countries. Could you talk about a little bit on what you saw in the data and what that really showed?
So there's not. I don't think there's a lot that I can say that hasn't already been said, right? Of course, it's incredibly concerning, right? So that specific part of the report. I mean, not only we partnered with so what was it? DTEX. I'm not sure if you heard of
Mm-hmm.
them, right? They've done a lot of work on that specific research, that specific part, and we work a lot of them on like what were the types of positions that were open. So again, looking at the broad statistic data, what the kind of industries that were targeted, right? We did talk to a lot of people as well, and was one where we did. I think we usually don't do much quote unquote interviews or anecdotes, but we specifically for this we felt that because there's people, right, a lot of people involved, right, in hiring and again job markets, right. It's really interesting to see how the stories of oh yeah, no, by the way, these were the best employers that we had for a long time. You know what I mean? And you know, there were people who were like really sorry to see them go.
Of course, they're the best. They've got 10 other people behind them doing all the work. They're amazing.
Talk about leverage, right?
Yeah.
So it is. I think this is one of those things where I believe that the overall it's going to get harder for them to embed themselves as more and more information becomes public, right? And so it's something that, but again, it's one of those things where, you know, security is really branching out into other fields, and we have to inform how other fields behave and things of the sort. But I don't think there's much more I can add. We did provide a lot of statistics on the report, right? Because again, we wanted people to understand the big picture as well, especially when there are so many anecdotes, right?
Yeah, a lot of anecdotes. So I want to kind of have a conversation with you, and this is net new, and just kind of get your first blush at this. And the conversation is, and I did the analysis on 2025 and then this new report, and it kind of still holds true, which is, what do I need to do effectively from a controls, a defender's perspective to mitigate 90, 95%? The 100% is impossible, but let's pick some percentage benchmark. 90% was my first default. What are the controls I need to put in place to mitigate the incidents and breaches? The second one is, wow, here's where we need innovation. We don't have those effective controls. We need something new. It's a new possible threat vector or an existing threat vector that's over new technologies that really haven't solved, and we kind of get there. So to get to that 90%, and this is really asking for your opinion. The first one, no shocker, because we already talked about it, vulnerability management, patch management, which is hairy and complex underneath that, but that was first and foremost. The second one is MFA, or really, I would say mature identity management, which includes 2FA, MFA. I would actually put in there this topic we call non-human identities or service accounts. And of course, with agentics, you know, that needs to be brought into the conversation as well. But how do you ensure that if that password or that token was compromised, what's that second layer of authentication on top of it? The third one, we did not talk about this, but EDR, very critical across all devices. Now, I would kind of really underscore the fact that EDR pumps out a lot of data that very few people actually use, but EDR and detection of ransomware and malware on endpoints is pretty huge. Also includes DNS egress filtering. On egress capabilities came up as well. The next one, which was not a direct, but really mitigation of impact, backups. You got ransomware, et cetera, workstation, otherwise, you got to get those backups done. I can't tell you how many people don't do mature backups of their data. Yeah, please.
Can I tell you something? So one of the, I mean, this is going to be known when the report launches. So we actually have a second report this year that we've been putting together at the same time. That's going to launch like June 16, and it's specifically focused on financial impact. So we're calling it the breach impact study, right? It's kind of our version of quote unquote cost of a data breach or something like that. And it's something we have worked with cyber insurers. We have over 70,000 cyber claims over the past 6 or so years. And there's a lot of interesting information there about specific ransomware and data recovery loss. Yeah. And because we have been checking, we have been trending that are people paying the ransom or not, right? And why are they not paying the ransom, right? And so, of course, there is a percentage, there is a surprisingly large percentage for us of people. So think about the cyber claims line, every single type of loss. Ransomware cases where there was no extortion loss, so they probably didn't pay the ransom, right? And there was no data recovery. That means they didn't need to. Yeah. So they either had everything. The backup was very well set, right? They didn't have to buy someone to come in and try to crack encryption or something like that. Yeah. Or they weren't encrypted before. So kind of the backup place, having the restoration, the resiliency process in place for something like a potential encrypting event on a ransomware attack is really key of like having the leverage in the negotiations, if that makes sense. So that was just something I want to put out there because I was it's so funny to talk about breaches like this, but I was pleased when I saw that data because, and again, I don't want to make, of course, every single one of these is a disaster, but to understand how things put together, it's terrible. I think this is how like a mortician must be. Like, yeah, I had a great day at the funeral parlor. This, you know what I mean? I do apologize for that, but yeah, it's very interesting. Sorry, back to you.
No. I think it's really important, and my point in talking about this, including backups, is I think we overcomplicate. I mean, it's a mile wide, mile deep topic. I'm not dismissing the complexity that is the end-to-end cyber challenge, but the thing that I take away from your report, other than the data that brings, is really from a defender's point of view. What do I need to do to stop it? And it gets back to the meat and potatoes. It's like 6 or 7 things that you need to be world class at. You need to get patch management, which every company struggles with. EDR, sure, we have it, but hey, what is the coverage? DNS filtering, maybe they don't do it at all, generally speaking. Some companies do, but not. But it's a manageable number of things that you can go to C staff or the company to say effectively, there's a lot of things we need to do, but this is massively critical that we just become best in class. And that is something I think a lot of people can get their arms around. And it's hairy and dirty underneath, no question. But does that resonate with you, or am I missing something significant?
No, 100%, right? And I think to your point of what's the 95, 99%, the whole theme of this report, right? And we try to, again, we always try to identify a theme, right? It's really ground up because we don't know what the year holds, we don't know what the data we're gonna get, but it was really like how much change is going on, right? And we talked about the 3 of them here, which were the kind of the 3 pillars, which was the vulnerabilities being number 1 now, all the assistance of generative AI on attacks with verifiable data on that, and kind of the shift for the social engineering being more interactive as a kind of a prelude to more damaging attacks. These are all easy to understand. The shifts, there were shifts, but the outcome for the defender is pretty much the same. So we talk a lot about it's still the foundational, right? Things are changing, but look, the strategies we have put together, our understanding of the world, of the threat landscape as it is, holds, right? Hey, it's going to get messy, right? Maybe there are definitely concerns on speed and scale, right? We are seeing preludes of, it might get a little bit faster than we are comfortable with, but you don't have to flip the table, and start from scratch at all, right? These are all known things. We may be getting more of them, right? We may be getting them out of order, right? But if you stick to, and again, I think the examples you gave are very good examples of like high leverage, controls, high leverage things that you really don't need to think too hard about your own organizational's, threat modeling and what does it look like to make a pitch for either of those as being needed, right? Definitely, excellent starting point.
Two last questions. I really appreciate your time. Where do you think, or where do you see us needing innovation?
Oh boy. I'll tell you one thing that it's group chat stuff, right? The thing you tell your friends in the group chat, and hopefully I'm not getting in trouble. So it's specifically about generative AI. Like I told you, I maybe because I spent so much time with data science and quote unquote good old machine learning before, right? I think I can see the cracks very easily, right? Where those things don't break down. But I would be incredibly irresponsible and untrue if I didn't acknowledge that there's a lot of things that it actually seems to be helping a lot, right? I am a very proud user of like Claude Code, and it's incredible, how much time that little thing saves me. But and this is not an AI problem, okay? First and foremost, but offensive findings, they are shared, right? Someone finds a 0-day or cracks, they go into the conference. It's incredibly shared, right? We see offensive innovation being publicly shared and talked about constantly. We do not see that with defensive innovation, right? And so defensive innovation, someone makes a defensive breakthrough, the first thing they do is they shut up and they call their VC. That's what they do, right? So it's hard to have. I know there are innovations out there in defense that are being powered by not just AI, right? Innovative thinking, right? Sometimes you just look from a problem on a different angle, right? But this doesn't break through. And to your point in the beginning of the call, like you said, 1,500, you boil them down to, and again, let's work from these 50, though they are the real deal, right? How long until this is available to everybody? And again, I'm not saying we should. I'm not advocating against the model at all. No. But that's the struggle that I have. You know what I think? The visibility of the defensive innovations is incredibly hard to have, right? If you're not sitting like on your chair, for instance, right?
It is. I think that my advice, and I do this every time, it's one, when I think through what is the program we need to build, what does the data show me? Verizon, DBIR, and there's a bunch of other different frameworks and other things you need to kind of synthesize down. What is that internal threat assessment on the company and the product and the business model? That goes into that. That kind of morphs into a common control structure. But they really need to look at why security fails. What are the root cause issues? And time again, it's not because we don't have a vulnerability management process. It's we didn't have enough people, we didn't get enough buy-in, or that because those IT engineers, it's labor on their side. So we get into a question as practitioners, are we really trying to transform to a highly automated function? A lot of it is this very simple, if this, then that. There's tools out there, low code, no code to enable this, but I don't see that in a massive scales. And those best in class companies, security teams have adopted that as a core principle of whatever it is, how do we automate it first and then labor second versus labor first and not automate second. So I think that's my advice to any practitioner. It's my advice. It's like really investigate for yourself why security fails and then try to solve that. I have my own opinion. Last question. So Alex, what is anything that we did not talk about that maybe we should have?
I mean, I could talk about the report for hours, really. I do think we touched on most of the important things. I do really wish people. I want people to download the report, read the report, right? And I mean, read the report. I'm not saying, give it to your AI model to summarize it for you. We got it all summarized. I'll send you the statistics. Send me your email.
Yeah.
I'll send you the statistics. Read it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much nuance and there's so much thought that goes into, the numbers are only part of the story, right? The numbers help us frame, okay, what is going on, and trying to point again humbly, to be clear, trying to point the direction forward, right? Which we hope, and again, I expect us to be wrong most of the time, but if it fosters the discussion of what we should be doing better, how do we, look at all of this and try to find out solutions that are going to help. As you can probably, I'm big into community. I'm big into, if we were doing more sharing of data, if we were working together more. I mean, of course, everybody here is trying to make money, right? There's a lot of competitors, but it's a really, really, really hard problem for you to go at it alone, right?
Yeah.
And so we hope this every year, right? That people can read, people can react to it. Hate it. Please tell me I'm wrong, right? There's nothing gives me more pleasure than to learn something new, right? But we really make this for you, right? Every year I ask myself, why is Verizon still letting me do this, right? It's a joke, of course. They get a lot out of it, but we make this for everybody, right? I usually joke around that the DBIR is one of those things, just like a private library, a public library, right? If public libraries didn't exist, and you've told them, hey, let's do something like this, people would just laugh it out of the room. Who's going to want to do this? Nobody's going to make money, and that's kind of it. It's truly. We try every day to make it to be, it's the object of the commons, right? It's really for everybody, right? And to that point, if you feel like you're not being represented, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to get your data as well and make it public for everybody so people can understand what we're up against.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a point for the audience and maybe to you, Alex, and the team, I would always take this report. I would share it out with my board members and my C staff, and I would have a preamble to it, which is really a compare and contrast to how we're performing to those mitigating controls. But it's a great end-to-end kind of analysis, especially for somebody who is not in security, to understand really what is going on. So having said that, where can the audience find the report? Where can they connect with you and anything else regarding that?
So the report is available at, very short URL, verizon.com/DBIR. Straight there, right? And you're going to find it to download it. There is a soft gate. You can ignore it. Just click go away. It will give you the report, right? But to do, I get paid by the download guy, so please go there and download it for me. I don't, but it's good for our numbers. That's for sure. So I can be found. It can be found on LinkedIn. If you are into Blue Sky, you can probably find me at Blue Sky as well. There is an email for the team. So DBIR@verizon.com. You can reach the DBIR team if you have any specific questions about the report, about the data, anything. We love questions. We love to. We really enjoy this work. If it doesn't show, so if you need anything, you want anything from us, just let us know. We'll be more than happy to help.
Well, Alex, on behalf of myself and, of course, all the security practitioners in the world, thank you and your team for putting this out. And thank you for coming on and spending about an hour with me monologuing and talking about this. I love it. And so I really appreciate your time and the effort.
Thank you so much. It's been incredibly fun.
Thanks.